Hello, Facebook world, TCI, Jonathan's Refuge, all of our faithful followers and friends and loved ones around the world. Today, we're gonna speak on a message of endurance. What does it take to endure a situation or a thing? I get asked that question actually a lot. How did you survive what may be a health thing or a situation? How did you endure through it? Now, ironically, I go back to how I learned from who I heard it from the best. There was a man named Viktor Frankl. If you haven't heard of him, he's a famed psychologist, and he's written many books. And I had the pleasure of meeting him through my birth father. And Victor was he was a Jew, and so he was put into a concentration camp when he was in World War II. And he endured some of the most brutal things. He was in Auschwitz and some other places. He endured horrific brutality that is just horrible to even think of imagining going through. And I remember when I asked a simple question, how did you do it? And he smiled with this beautiful smile and just said, because only I and I alone control my mind. So no matter what environment he was in, no matter what situation he was in, he had control of his mind. Now, he was an older man at that time, and then he went into all kinds of things like, but it takes a lifetime to do that. So I, of course, thought I could do just like he did in just a few hours. But, at 48, it's taken me, and I met him when I was just a kid. And so I think about that and how long it's taken, and I'm still not there. You know what I mean? Even though people think they can endure anything, you can endure anything. Yeah, no. Yeah, every human has their limits, right? Every person has a wall they hit. But that's kind of what endurance is about. It's like the gym. If you go to the gym and you go in and you work on your bicep and I can't work on mine because I actually tore the muscle. And so it's kind of a limp arm. But let's say I was working on it. I would not tear the muscle off, but I would tear fibers in the muscle. That's what working out does. And when you tear the fibers, then the body needs nutrients. So if you give it the nutrients, it will go to the muscle and you will then gain muscle. So you have to endure some pain to gain growth. Now that's the problem right there. So we have to endure pain to endure and go through growth, to gain growth, because it's in the growth that makes us stronger. I look back at any situation from my past over the last 5 decades, any of them. If you put me in any of those situations, it'd be a walk in a park, a cakewalk. Why? Because I've done it before. I've been there. I've endured it. So I already know the ropes. So what happens, if you look back at your life, you'll see every time you endured something, you got a little stronger. Now, some people don't always get stronger. That's because they're not applying the lessons of life. They're not actually trying to take what they've learned and improve themselves. They just lived through it. That's like the old saying, I'm old. You should respect me because I'm old and wise. You're not wise just because you're old. I know a lot of dumb old people, okay? I know a lot of dumb young people. Age doesn't have anything to do with it. The lesson that you went through, if you applied it and learned from it, then yes, you are getting wiser. And if you do that through your entire life, then you will be a person that someone says, look at that person over there, that stateswoman, that statesman. They're really wise. Well, it takes a lifetime to build that up. And one of the best ways I can encourage someone to do that is in the old Jewish faith, there's a book called Proverbs. It's written by a man named King Solomon. There's 31 chapters. The most we have in a month is 31 days. So if today is the 7th, you read the 7th chapter of the book of Solomon's. It is not a book that I would say I could live without. It's a book that you have to have in your life. When you read Solomon's wisdoms, as I call them, because they're all little bits of wisdoms, if you read that wisdom that he gives us, it transforms you. It becomes part of you. It becomes part of who you are. Well, one of his scriptures is actually tattooed under the face of my wrist here in Hebrew, in the original language that it was written in. And it's 27:7 or 23:7. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. I have to say that's probably one of the staples of my life. that in my heart, I've always had whatever that belief was that I could overcome a health issue, that I meditate on it in my heart. And as I believe in my heart, as I meditate on it, as it sits in my heart, then I become that. Maybe it was my 280 pounds I lost in weight. Maybe it was overcoming all the tumors and the surgeries and the heart attacks, or the MIs as they're called, and the strokes, and have to learn how to walk and talk. Do you know how frustrating it was to have to learn how to speak again, to have to learn how to language? And when you talked, it's like blah, 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 I live this bottle, and you're, in your head, you said a full sentence, but it came out like word salad. It was one of the most brutal things. I went to prison young in my life, and then I went to prison later on in my life, and I had to endure. In my youthful days, I earned every ounce of my time. The latter, I did not deserve to go, but that's neither here nor there. I still had to go. I had to endure something that was unjust. I had to endure a pain and a heartache. That's okay. I smiled because I realized, you know what? I got away with so much in my life. I should have never been walking. I should have been put on death row. I should have been locked away forever. But I made it out. And because of that, I know right now, because of that, that's what carried me through some of those dark moments. And so you got to learn to smile and say, I got this. I own what's between my ears, and no one else can control it. I won't let them. I won't let that person on the street, get me worked up. I won't let the teller at the bank upset me. I won't allow, my boss or my roommate or a, family member or a friend to control that. That is your space right there between those ears. Sometimes you got to take a break. Sometimes you just have to say, I need to take a walk. And that's okay. Everyone does different things. Some like to walk. My wife loves to dance. For her, she's a dancer, so she likes to go out and dance in the backyard when she's frustrated and stuff. Me, I prefer to walk. Prefer to punch bag, but those days are kind of over. I shouldn't be doing that, so I stick to the walking, and that's why I get a lot of walking in. But it's how I handle my stress. It's how I handle things that I can endure. And you say, well, what if you couldn't walk? Because in prison, they pretty strict rules, but you can always find ways. You can just sit there and walk around your room in circles. And I did. And I counted how many steps. So I actually knew in my cell how many times I walked around it. And then I could add up how many miles I did that day. And when we didn't have yard, that's what I would do. So you can't tell me you can't find a solution. What if they locked you up? Then I would, if I physically couldn't walk, I would close my eyes and take a walk in my past. And I would walk a lane that I've walked that I love very much. And I can envision right now, there's a path that me and my buddy Brian take. And when we walk on it, there's just one spot. If you look up, there's two trees and there's these eagles. There's a pair up there that live and spend a lot of time there. There's a lake on the other side of our trail. And I can see it right now. I mean, I can see the actual eagle up there and his partner. And I can see them scoping, one scoping out on the lake and the other one scoping out on the trail. And it brings a smile to my face. Now, I didn't even go on that. Now, some of you might say that's BS. Really? Let me tell you some science about this. They take athletes and they hook up athletes to all of this equipment, and they sit them in a chair and they tell them to run their Olympic race in their head. So if they're in those, the quarter miles, I don't even know the names of half the stuff they do, the pole vault, the high jump, whatever it is. Here's the ironic thing. They tell them to close their eyes and start the training. Pretend like you're running down the track. Pretend in your head, run the track. You hear the gunshot, boom, go. And what's interesting is their actual muscles start firing in their body. The actual muscles that are firing when they're out on the track are firing right now on their body while they're running it. It's crazy how this can actually work. You can literally put yourself into this moment where even though you're not physically out there, you can actually physically still get your muscles to fire off because they know that right now I'm supposed to be running, even though you're sitting. So the mind has an amazing amount of power in it. We barely even tap into, it depends on which genius you want to listen to, between 10 to 15%. Some say as high as 17, but most say between 10 and 15% of our brain's power capability we tap into. Some believe if you actually could control 100% of your brain, the brain itself, that you could physically just walk through a wall. You could tell your molecules to disassemble and reassemble as you came through it. I don't know about all that. I've tried to walk through walls, but I usually hit them head on and it knocks me out. So I think I'll pass on that one. But I look about endurance, and there's other things that you got to endure, not just physical things. Some of them are painful things. And I've been going through some painful things lately. And some of those things I'm not going to talk about and discuss, but they're they're very close to my heart, and people that I love very much and would give my life for. But the pain from it is of the same pain as though I when I lost a child physically. And I remember that pain, and I remember how long it took me to pull my head out of that depression. It took me a couple days. I beat the living tar out of this one room and lockers and stuff. I was so angry and mad and hurt and just distraught with myself. And that's the same feeling that I had just recently. And I looked to David, and one of the King David in the Jewish Bible, the Old Testament. King. He was the second king of Israel, and he's one of my favorite people to speak on. David David mourned when his son died. He lost a son. It says, to the servant's surprise, David had a much different reaction to the news of his son's death. Instead of despair, David chose to live. Listen to that. David chose to live. He got up off the ground, took a bath, and got dressed. David took time to worship God, choosing to focus on the goodness of God rather than his own pain. Then David went home and had his first meal in a week. He took a week, and he suffered for this week, and he mourned for this whole week, but he didn't allow it to control him forever. He stopped and said, I'm going to choose to live. I'm going to get off the ground. I'm going to go take a bath. I'm going to shave. I know some of you think, hey Bishop, when are you going to shave? I'm trying to grow the beard out because I was planning this long walk, and it would have been handy to have a beard, but I might shave it now. Choose to live. That's the key you get from that, is David chose to live. But see, it's not just choosing to live. You got to take action. So what was the step David did? David got off the ground. When I was a fighter, it wasn't how many times you hit the mat that mattered. It was how many times did you get back up? That's what matters in a fight. You can knock me down, but one thing about me is I get back up. I remember only one time in my life that in a fight where I got knocked out. This tiny little Asian kid and me were in school together, and I was a tough dude, and I let the world know. And we got into a little scuffle, and I just remember seeing a roundhouse kick coming up, bam, and it hit me. And I don't remember a thing after that. Everyone that watched it said while in the air, he kicked my head, used my head to push off, swing around all in one motion, and kicked the other head. And they said it happened like that. So he was like, bam, 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 whoop, and I was out. Next thing you know, I wake up and I'm in an ambulance, and I'm heading to the hospital. Got completely knocked out. Other than that, I got back up every time physically. And there's something to be said about that in your metaphoric aspect. When you lose your job, what are you going to do about it? We can sit there and talk about it like it's horrible. But like David said, he took a week, he got out of despair, and instead of staying in the despair, he chose to live. He chose to get off the ground. He chose to take a bath. He chose to get dressed. He chose to say, I am going to live. You can't choose what others in your life are doing right now to you. You can't choose any of them. Matter of fact, most things in life you really have no choice over, to be honest with you, except for that one thing between your ears. How you think and feel and all of that is up to you. Those are in your head. It's in my head. And so I look at that. Endurance requires patience on our part. That was another note I saw. Patience to stand firm, to stand your ground. Patience to trust God. It also requires time. And this is one I don't like. It also requires time. There are things that happen right away, but there are things that are important that seem to take a lot longer. I'm not a fan of time. I want it now. Well, I'm not that guy that wants to sit there and wait. That's how I've been most of my life. But I also like the finer things in life. And if you've ever enjoyed a fine wine and you go to a vineyard, the longer that wine is stored in those casks, the better the wine is going to be. the finer the taste is, the sweeter it is. The sooner you harvest it and drink it, it's just wine, vino. But when you let it sit and you actually lose a portion of it. Same thing with if you go to a Scotch or a whiskey plant and how they make their scotches and whiskeys. They lose in the casks about 20% to the angels. They call it the angels. Some call it the angel's toast or the angel's part because it evaporates. So they're losing portion of the whiskey and scotch. It evaporates. But what's left is very smooth, and people are willing to pay hundreds of dollars for a little tiny bottle of it. And so with life and time, things can get better. I joke with my wife, and I used to say, if you look at my pictures, I sure get better looking the older I get. And I don't know why it is, but in my family, like my father, my birth father, I think he looks better than he's ever looked. My adopted dad looks better now than he ever did when he was younger. It's amazing how some people, not everybody. I got a friend who, the older he gets, good Lord have mercy. But my point is time is important, and we have to be patient, because remember when I just made that question about, or that statement about the note about being patient, to stand your ground, to trust God is sometimes not easy to do. I'm not a fan of trusting others around me, because I have a saying, always bet on Brown. I've never lost. I bet on me 9 out of 10 times, I'm a winner. 1 out of 10 times, I'm going to lose. That's my track record. So 90% of the time, I always will bet on Brown. But here's the thing. I bet on God more now than I bet on Brown. God doesn't get it wrong. The universe, the great architect, he's not a puppet playing, puppet master. But here's the thing that's important. We reap what we sow. So the universe, the more we sow of kindness and goodness and love and patience and all of these beautiful traits that we as humans have that separate us from the animal kingdom, what we have is amazing if we tap into that. And it's not easy. It really isn't. You have to bite your tongue. And I wish I could say I'm perfect at it. I'm not. My wife will tell you that herself. I struggle in that area very often. I lash out at people when you come at me. I'm a fighter. It's my instinct. I've been trained my whole life. When the first punch flies, pony up and let's go. And so I have to always remember, hey, we're a fighter, but now we're fighting a different cause. We're not out there physically fighting it. And even though you might feel like someone's attacking you, they're not. Okay. And maybe they are, but you don't have to take it like that. Take a step back, take a breath, take a walk, go dance like my wife, go do something else, go play basketball. A friend of mine plays soccer 3 times a week, one of our board members' husband. Whatever it is that you need to do, go do it. But take a breath and understand this. I promise you, you'll get through it and you can endure it. If you really want to get into this with me, I would love to do a actual one-on-one with the group about this and talk about like real live events and how we can endure through those. So if you're interested in that, let me know. I'd love to get together with a bunch of the members from the church and have some coffee someday, a Saturday or something, and just discuss this topic, because enduring pain and suffering, enduring all that we're going through is a hard thing to deal with. You get a new guy, he just came out of prison. He's figuring it all out, and he's trying to endure because he had a life like this and now his life's like this, and it's different and it can be chaos and it can be hard. And then you were inside for so long and there's this world there. Or what about my friend who's a corporate executive and he made 7 figures, folks. That's over $1 million a year. And then he lost it all. And now he's like trying to adjust. His whole life was this, and now he lost it all. And he's down here, and he's like, I don't even know what to do. Like, I got to get some money. And I'm like, well, you got to take a real job right now. I know you're looking for that top shelf job again, and you might be able to get it. But he made some poor choices. And until he can get that next place up, he's got to start working. And for him, it's chaos. His life was this, and now it's this. So how do you endure that? Patience with yourself, patience with the situation, patience with the environment, patience with your family and friends. Take a breath. It's going to be a long one, maybe. I know what I'm going through is, and I just have to say, okay, God, it's all in your hands. And I love this person. more than my life. And they can't see that. So what I'll do is I will endure my heartache. But I'm not going to sit there and stay on the ground. Instead, I'm going to choose to live. I'm going to choose to get off the ground. I did that today. I was resting this morning and I said, stop. And I looked in my chest like my birth father and my adopted dad have done in their sermons many times. And I quoted David because there's a scripture in Psalms where he goes, "Oh, my soul, you will yet praise the Lord." And I remember my dad used to almost I use the word violently say it. He would yell it when he had a bad day. And I would walk in as a little kid and say, "Dad, what are you yelling at?" "I'm yelling at me. I'm telling my soul to stop being in despair. And I'm trying to tell my soul about tomorrow. The future is coming. The beauty will come around the corner. The sun will rise. The sun will come out tomorrow. Bet your bottom dollar that tomorrow it will come out and you will rise above it. But you will go through a lot of pain and suffering, and you can endure it. Trust in God, be patient, choose to live, get off the ground, get a shower, get dressed, go have a supper, and look yourself in the mirror and say, I got this, one step at a time. I love you guys. You know the drill, right? TCI, we coexist with all people of all faiths because every faith is really speaking the same thing. It's just our version of the deity. I don't care if you're a Muslim or a Jew, if you're black or white, gay or straight, or anything else in the world. It doesn't matter. We are all striving and trying to do the best we can in this life. And I love that about our church. The people in our church are truly inclusive and walk the faith. So I love you guys. We'll see you all next week. God bless.